Brics is the nucleus of alternative revolutionary ideology of reorganization of the humankind on different bases. Not Western, not Protestant, not capitalist, not liberal, nor Western-centric. That is multipolarity.
This could take 30 or 40 years because it implies that you have to build a post-Bretton Woods system. Can you imagine a system that lasted almost 8 decades and you have to start from scratch with an alternative system?
They are losing everywhere and everything, and we are gaining everywhere and everything.
We have possibly 3 days in Kazan that can change the world. That's why the stakes are stratospheric.
Hello, everyone. This is the New Rules Podcast, and I'm your host, Dimitri Simes Jr. We're back with another super episode, this time on the upcoming Brics Summit, and we have a lot to talk about. Thankfully, we have 2 intellectual heavyweights in the studio with me today, philosopher Alexander Dugin and geopolitical analyst Pepe Escobar. Thank you so much for coming, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Yeah. So I'll start with you, Professor Dugin, because this Brics Summit is taking place at a pivotal moment. We have the Middle East on fire, a chaotic election in the United States, and the Ukraine conflict still ongoing. What is the broader geopolitical significance of this summit, and why should our viewers care about it given everything else that's going on in the world right now?
So, in order to understand the importance of the Brics meeting, we need to understand the broader picture of what is going on in the world. And in the world, there is the big change of the world order, global order. There is still unipolar system of Western hegemony trying desperately to continue to save itself, to rest in the place, and that is the real reason of the Ukraine war and the dramatic events in the Middle East. So, behind Ukraine and behind Israel, there is this unipolar West, collective West, that tries to save its hegemony, and there is emerging multipolar structure with new poles, Russia, Islamic civilization, China, India, that is on the other balance, other side of the situation. And there is the clash of them. There is the clash between unipolarity and multipolarity. And the front line of this clash is Ukraine and Middle East. In that moment, the majority of the humanity is reconsidering its position in this fight. And Brics is the structure uniting those who are in favor of multipolarity. That is alternative humanity, alternative multipolar world order that is under construction now against unipolar system. And Brics is there is very possible that is a kind of image of the future, of what will be. So the Brics is the nucleus of the future humanity based on the multipolarity. And symbolically, this Brics meeting is taking place in Russia, one of the most radical actor of this change to multipolarity. In the moment of the very, very radical fight in the Ukraine, with Russia beginning to win this war, and all the humanity, all the rest of humanity, the rest, the West and the rest, this rest now is choosing the camp. All or to stay, whether to stay aligned or to unipolarity and still continue accepting the hegemony of the West, or to change the camp in favor of multipolarity. And the most symbolic moment that the head of states belonging to Brics come to Russia in the open fight with the West, and the West doesn't like it at all. That the West don't like them to come to showing thus they support to Putin's politics, and more than that, the newcomers, new countries want now to join BRICS. So making clear sign of their choice. So I think this time maybe the balance is going to receive the small, maybe small symbolic weight that could define all the rest, because we are in a very unstable situation, and if we add some weight to one of two cups of the balance, that will decide all the future, because maybe after that BRICS meeting we could affirm with all seriousness that the multipolarity is already here. Or maybe not. So nobody knows the exact moment when this shift really occurs. So this shift is it's something lasting. So we are in the process of coming from unipolar system to the multipolar system. But when it happens, nobody could say for sure. Maybe this time.
So Pepe, Professor Dugin framed the summit as being as the crossroads of multipolarity from a political standpoint, from a ideological standpoint. But I want to get your view from a geoeconomic standpoint. What is the significance of this summit for the global economy and the global financial order?
As important as Alexander just defined geopolitically, because there's a little tilt. We have possibly 3 days in Kazan that can change the world. That's why the stakes are stratospheric, in fact. And geoeconomic as much as geopolitically, because this week in Moscow, on Thursday, we're going to have the meeting of the BRICS working groups. On Friday, we have the final meeting of the BRICS Business Council. These are the top-level Sherpas that have been discussing 48 hours a day for months the practical suggestions for the heads of state. And it's up to the last minute. Like you can imagine, for instance, this paper reaching Putin's table, Xi's table, President Lula's table over the weekend. Then they have to read it, analyze the suggestions, and when they go to the table together on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, they have to reach consensus among the, let's put it 9.5, because Saudi Arabia, nobody knows where Saudi Arabia is. They are in and out and over the wall. So that's why it's so important geoeconomically. And all these things that we have been discussing throughout 2024. BRICS Pay, which has no definition so far, which is similar to the M-Pay system that is already being implemented. But the IMF and the Bank of International Settlements are involved in it. M-Bridge, sorry. And BRICS wants to do BRICS Bridge based on the M-Bridge. But it has to be completely outside of the framework of the Bank of International Settlements or the IMF. Otherwise, you'll be reproducing a Western hegemony system. Same thing with the reform of the New Development Bank in Shanghai. I'll try to be diplomatic, but it's hard. Most experts know that the NDB is ineffective now because the statutes of the bank are based on the US dollar. how can you build an international, an alternative geoeconomic system based on the currency that you want to bypass? So this brings us to the discussion, a discussion that we had in Moscow this past week. A group of experts, parallel to Brics, they were discussing the concept of a new reserve currency. But this has to start from scratch. That you have a set of experts that, and then this has to go to Brics experts, and then has to go to the leaders. So, okay, how we're going to implement a new reserve currency from scratch? So that gives an idea to our audience of the complexity of what's being discussed for months, in fact. But complementing what Alexander said, it's the tilting moment. The potentiality for these next 3 days to change the whole thing, starting from scratch, and for have a high-speed rail train, taking off, are immense. And that's why the whole planet will be glued to Kazan next week.
You gave a very complex answer, so let me, for our audience's clarity, have a amateurish follow-up question. When people think of Brics, they generally think about de-dollarization and alternatives to the Western financial system. How close or how far are we to developing these alternatives to the US dollar and the alternative payment system?
Alternative payment systems, we are closer than ever. Full de-dollarization, it's a long process. And if you talk to the best economists from Brics countries, they say this is a process that can last decades. Or if you talk to Michael Hudson, for instance, he'll say, look, this could take 30 or 40 years. Because it implies that you have to build a post-Bretton Woods system. Can you imagine a system that lasted almost 8 decades, and you have to start from scratch with an alternative system? So you have to convince not only governments inside Brics, governments outside Brics, and big companies of Brics nations and outside Brics as well. It's an enormous task, because some of these economists, they say something very simple. Whenever we have these discussions with the heads of big state companies, of private companies, they say, yeah, but the system, the way it is nowadays, it suits us. It rolls by inertia. Everybody's used to it. Why change it? So you have to convince CEOs of enormous multinational companies, for instance, now, look, we have a better system, and it's going to be a better system for your business as well on a global level. So it is starting from scratch. But in terms of alternative payment systems, it's already very developed, because the Brics are already trading among themselves in their own national currencies. And this will expand to multilateral trade inside Brics with national currencies, and expand to what we call Brics Plus, the partners.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to the US dollar, I encounter a lot of skepticism when I talk to friends, family about it. The analogy that I try to use, that the US dollar is facing a death by 1,000 cuts, right? Because a lot of people think that we're going to wake up one day, pick up the newspaper, or, again, very few people read newspapers, but, pick up, Twitter or, whatever news website, and see a headline, US dollar dethroned, new Brics currency is established. I think that's not going to happen. Instead, we're going to see, the US dollar lose a little bit ground here, a little bit there, a little bit there. And at some point, maybe decades, it'll have a certain critical mass, and the US dollar will lose its leading position.
30 seconds. Just look at the trade balance between Russia and China. It's already bypassing the US dollar in practice. And this is something that happened for the past 2 years or so. So it can be done.
Professor, as I mentioned in my previous question, Brics is oftentimes thought of mainly as an economic club that's focused on issues like de-dollarization, different financial systems. But do you think that Brics should limit itself to economics, or do you think that it has the mandate and the potential to be something bigger than just an economic club?
So first of all, I consider the economy, the economics, to be just the continuation of the philosophy. So the economic sphere is not something totally isolated, something external that has its own laws, its own logic. So that is the myth, the modern myth that we are dealing in economy with something totally independent from culture, from politics, from spirituality, from values, from all other aspects of human being. So when we isolate economy, we immediately have very wrong and distorted vision of the society, of international relations, of the people. It is nothing but continuation of the culture or politics. So economy does matter, but that isn't all. So we could not reduce to economy as to destiny every other aspect of human being. And I consider that that is precisely the problem, that the global economic system based on capitalism, based on liberalism, based on domination of dollar is expression of some civilization. It is not something obvious, something neutral. It is not. It is application of some spiritual and metaphysical attitude to the material reality. And I could mention, for example, the great work of that is called the Protestant Ethic of Max Weber, where Weber has shown that modern capitalism is nothing but application of Protestant individualistic ethics to the field of economy. It is not something authentic, something universal, something common to all other civilizations. Not at all, because the most of civilization, not Western or not modern civilizations, they don't accept the usury by religious, spiritual, philosophical reasons. And the modern day capitalism is based on the usury. And usury, it is a specific alienation of the working of the finance outside of the labor. So the labor, it's always human, and speculation and usury is something alienated from human labor. And that is a representation of decline, of spiritual decline on modern Western civilization. In that sense, modern global economy is the embodiment of this global decline. Spengler has made the difference between an opposition between culture and civilization. In his ideas, when culture dies, it becomes civilization in a material economic sense. In order to clarify his thought, we could say when the living civilization dies, it becomes economic civilization, pretending to reduce everything to market. And that is why not only the dollarization, not only imperialism of dollars or economic hegemony of the West is evil. The system of global capitalist market is evil in itself. So when Brics working only in the field of economy and trying to counterbalance a bit, maybe not radically, this Western-centric economic and financial model, dealing only with economy, it enters in the conflicts of much deeper nature. So Brics is the nucleus of alternative revolutionary ideology of reorganization of the humankind on different bases. Not Western, not Protestant, not capitalist, not liberal, nor West-centric. That is multipolarity. So maybe they start, the countries of Brics, they can sincerely believe they are only about, that is only, all the matters about economy. They could believe in that, but that doesn't change the reality. In the reality, that is something much deeper, because that is ongoing revolution against the global domination of the modern Western capitalist liberal system. And that is totally different thing. I don't think that the people of the Brics is ready today to accept or to acknowledge that. To acknowledge that, to accept that, to consciously develop this kind of division. But if we consider the situation from the philosophical point of view, it is precisely that. So, starting with economy, Brics will be obliged to reconsider the very principles of the Western modern civilization, because multipolarity invites them to reaffirm their civilizational, their cultural identities. And that is as well the total challenge to the West. The West refuses the universalism of the West. That is the main slogan of the Brics. The slogan that is not yet accepted, recognized, acknowledged, but that is already the main slogan of the Brics. The West against pretending of the West to be universal. So, but that changed everything. If the Western civilization, modern Western civilization, is only one of the different civilizations, so the Brics has won. So multipolarity has won. It is not about to destroy the West, but it is about to destroy the pretension of the West to be universal in economy, in finance, but much more important in values, in philosophy, in understanding or deciphering, interpreting the human nature, the nature of society, everything what modern West insists on to be universal, it should be reduced to regional. It is nothing but province of the world. So the victory of the West will be not annihilation of the West, but just reducing its pretension to the local level. That, in that sense, the West could be part of the Brics. So at the end of the days, there will such solution, because I think the Brics will replace Organization of United Nations, because it is much more balanced, much more multipolar, and much more, the Brics system as nucleus of multipolarity fits better to the present condition of the world order, and United Nations belongs to they belong to the previous phase of the history. Unipolarity has failed. And so-called the League of Democracies. And now we need the big reform of the global common law that should be based on the recognition of the equal dignity of all civilizations, and Brics is the icon of that.
So there's a lot, Professor Dugin has given us a lot to work with.
Big picture.
Yeah, so, more than 30 countries have signaled that they're interested in either joining Brics or cooperating with Brics in some sort of way. Why are so many countries lining up to join Brics? What sort of specific benefits do they hope to gain from that?
Well, because instinctively, their political classes, they're part of their ruling elites as well, they understand what Alexander just pointed out. that this system that inherited from the end of the Second World War, which is profoundly unequal, at a time when the US had 50% of the global GDP, and with those absolutely absurd vetoes in the UN Security Council with only 5 players, including 2 that nowadays are, at best, third-rate powers, like France and the UK. This cannot possibly work. And we see now with the genocide in Gaza, which it's impossible for the UN Security Council to expressly forbid and condemn Israel for a genocide, an ongoing genocide. It's never going to happen. And what Alexander said about Brics as the embryo of a new system, civilizational states, their elites, they get it. And I would say Russia, China, and Iran, they perfectly understand that. India is a much more complicated case because it is a civilizational state. They have the potential to understand that their future in a more equal world is not as a second-rate colony of the Americans, is as one of the big powers in integration of Eurasia. And they haven't made up their minds yet. Saudi Arabia, to come back to a practical case inside Brics, it's another immensely complicated problem because we have a young ruler that sings his Mick Jagger, in fact, because he appeals to young people in Saudi Arabia.
Better than Wahhabi.
But Wahhabi Mick Jagger, well, that's a bit complicated. And at the same time, he's hedging his bets between a project that is essentially an American-Israeli project, the IMEC connectivity corridor, which the acronym is misleading because essentially is a Israel, Saudi Arabia, Emirates corridor uniting Europe with India. That's the original American plan, in fact. So this implies a normalization of relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia, which is something that we were on the verge of seeing in front of us before the Gaza genocide, which turned the whole thing upside down, where public opinion inside Saudi is forcing MBS to, even with the typical Saudi thunderous silence, but he has to say, look, we're not going to normalize with Israel as long as we don't have a solution for the Palestine problem.
And so, in my first question, I alluded that the Middle East is on fire, and Pepe talked about the situation in Gaza and, I guess sort of Saudi Arabia's geopolitical game. I want to ask you more broadly about the Middle East, because it seems that Brics is presenting one vision, whereas we see Netanyahu and the United States presenting a different vision of the so-called new order in the Middle East. Could you, Professor Dugan, talk about, I guess, sort of the different visions that Brics is presenting for the Middle East compared to the United States and Israel?
So I think that Pepe has described correctly, at my view, the situation. So the Brics has not unified position about anything. So I think there is no crisis, no conflict in the world on which the states of Brics could agree today. It is too far to reach to this point. So I think that there is no common position of Brics concerning Ukraine, neither Israel or Middle East. So different countries follow different goals. I think that most advanced political vision is present in Russia, that tries to give the form to multipolarity. I think that comparing with other countries, the very idea of multipolarity is more developed here. Personally, I have written 2 books totally dedicated to multipolarity, translated in many languages, and recently speaking with our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Lavrov, I have suggested to organize in the most prestigious Russian institution, University of Foreign Affairs, a kind of center of multipolarity. Minister has signed the letter to the chief of this, to director of this institution, of this university, Torkunov, and the response was very, very brilliant, I think. Torkunov has said, we could not organize the Center for the Multipolar Studies because all our university is working in the field of multipolarity. We could not organize the part where in the situation where the whole thing is working on the same topic. That was not like that, for example, before the beginning of the special military operation, but I have no reason to believe to the chief of this university. That is very characteristic. Russia has decided to go multipolar way, and that is on the level of the president, of the political elite, of the head of the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs, and I think all responsible intellectuals and experts in Russia now are defending multipolarity. So Russia is advanced. The second great power belonging to BRIC that as well is going the same way, but more cautiously, it is China. In China, there are some centers developing multipolarity and other try to adjust, to adapt multipolarity to Chinese interests. It is not yet decided, I would say. Iran is very, very keen to promoting multipolarity. For them, that's the reason of their being. To be or not to be of Iran it depends directly, or either the world is multipolar or unipolar. So I think North Korea totally embraces multipolarity, and the other countries in BRIC have not yet such clarity in the vision. But I have spoken with the very influent persons in India, close to Modi, and they embrace multipolarity. So there is the equal trend in the Indian elite. So, and more multipolar we become, more clearly we understand the real nature of the conflicts in Ukraine, in Gaza, in Middle East, and less regional are our understanding. So multipolarity is as alternative global vision, because for those who are in favor of multipolarity, everything does matter. All the conflicts, all the contradictions, all the war, or all the genocides, or wherever they happen, they directly affect those who think multipolarly. And I think that is why there is no yet the consensus about how the BRICS or global majority qualify situation in Middle East. But I think that more advanced are the states and country in this direction, more they choose the radical support of the Palestinians, resistance and position of Iran, and more they are against the Western attitude to this region. But that is an ongoing process, and I think that we are not yet ready to speak about some common position. Everybody is against genocide, I think, in Brics. Everybody in Brics, not in the West. In Brics, generally, I would say, blame genocide of Israeli and thinks that is the crime of Netanyahu, but we could not say that is common, clear position. Maybe we should wait until the end of the meeting in Kazan, and maybe they will do a kind of step ahead. Maybe not yet. But generally, the situation in the Middle East is inscribed in geopolitical transition from unipolarity to multipolarity. The politics of Israel is based on the defense of the unipolarity. They consider themselves as the proxy of liberal globalists of Washington. So maybe their ambitions are much more messianic than Americans. Maybe they have idea that the Messiah is close, and soon the Israelis will rule the world, as they proclaim among themselves. There is David Lior, a very famous rabbi who has written a book about the necessity of the holy war against Palestinians and Muslims. So, awaiting Moshiach, Messiah, but I think that this kind of extremists views very popular in Israel. It is just regional adaptation of the real geopolitical mission of Israel that tries desperately to save global hegemony of the West. So they could imagine themselves to be ahead of all humanity, but in reality they are just proxy, one more proxy of the Western imperialism in the Middle East. And that real reason of Israel is very important, because sooner or later it will be open and discovered, and I think rejected and criticized by a multipolar majority of the world.
Pepe, I don't think we could have a conversation about BRICS in the Middle East without mentioning Turkey, which has become the first NATO country to apply for BRICS membership. What's going on here?
Oh, this is wonderful. Well, I was in Istanbul last week, and this was my first question to literally every Turkish official, academic, scholar that I met. Okay, let's say basic consensus among all of them. He's taking it seriously now, for the first time, probably. He's not hedging his bets like he used to until literally a few days ago when they entered their official application, right? But it's more complicated than that. Okay, several levels. 90% of the Turkish ruling class and establishment is Atlanticist and pro-NATO. This is not going to change from one day to another. So even if he wants to be part of BRICS, the people around him and the people who, let's say, the wealthiest parts of Turkey, they don't agree with that. They still think that they have a future in the EU and with NATO. No, in the EU, forget it. They will forever be blocked, especially by France and Germany. In NATO, it's more complicated, because the NATO that the people who run these silos in the deep state, including the Pentagon, including those generals that do the back and forth with Brussels and all that, the NATO that they have in mind, Turkey is expendable. Their NATO is London, Warsaw, the Scandinavians, and the Baltic Chihuahuas. These are the people who they think, and when you read NATO internal papers and when you read what the American think tanks are publishing, many of their studies, we're getting ready for war against Russia, and then it varies. It could be 2027, 2029, or I would say the realistic possibility, 2030. So this is the NATO that they want. And Turkey is not part of that. When you read all the papers, Turkey doesn't feature. So obviously Erdogan is aware of all that because his intelligence services, they follow the Americans very, very closely. His current foreign minister is a very smart guy, and he's looking towards Eurasia. He's a serious candidate to be a future president of Turkey. He's relatively young. He's in his early 50s. And of course, this integrates with the very Erdoganish idea of the organization of Turkic states. So it's fascinating. When you go to the National Museum in Astana, there's a huge map in one of the rooms with all the Turkic states in the world. Azerbaijan, everybody in Central Asia. And this in Erdogan's mind, this is their sphere of influence across Eurasia. So if you're not discussing at the top level with the top Eurasian partners, you have less than zero influence in Kazakhstan, for instance, where you can have 2 or 3 Turkish construction companies, but you don't have cultural influence, you don't have political influence, you don't have geopolitical influence. So Erdogan is looking at it at several levels. What my good interlocutors, which by the way, they're all Kemalists, Alexander, very, very funny. No radicals, Kemalists, very rational people, they say. He's looking at it in terms of the pieces of the chessboard across Eurasia that he can annex to the Turkish sphere of influence. So this means that he has to be not only a member of Brics, but a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization as well, which by the way is meeting while we are speaking here.
In Islamabad.
In Pakistan, in Islamabad, exactly. So his vision is, okay, I keep NATO as a sideshow, let's put it this way. I don't say to NATO, I'm leaving. No, I stay in NATO unless they kick me out. And I cultivate my new Eurasian friends. Very important. You know what's going to happen next week in Kazan? Erdogan is going to have 3 bilaterals. Guess with whom?
Putin?
China, Russia, and India. So he's courting them directly, face to face, selling Turkey to the 3 of them face to face. So this is a major game changer.
So that for the first time, the member of NATO chooses something different.
Yeah.
I agree with analysis of Pepe. So, and that is not only just gesture. It is not the joke. It is the beginning of disembodiment of the NATO. I agree that Turkey was the weak element of NATO. It is not one of the pillars, but it is second army of the NATO.
It's the second army.
Second army. And if the NATO state with the second army in NATO chooses to join the alternative organization, not yet militarily formed, not the kind of axis, but nevertheless, it is alternative vision of the world. So Erdogan is showing, but that he is on the multipolar world order club. So, and that is extremely symbolic. So the West, I think, and NATO should be very worried about that, because the beginning of the destruction of their system, because not only the West is a kind of attracting pole now. So there is appearing under our eyes the new pole of attraction. And Brics, not only Russia, not only China, but Brics in general. So it is the pole of attraction, including for the members of NATO. And that is huge symbolic moment. And I think that Erdogan could justify that, saying, I am not just for Russia or for China, but as well for India, that considers itself to be ally of the West. So I am not passing some borders, some red lines, but still it is a creeping victory of the multipolarity, not radical, not as you have said, Dmitry. Once you open your your social services, and you find that there is no more NATO, no more dollars, no more American hegemony, but is ongoing process in all these levels. So they are losing everywhere and everything, and we are gaining everywhere and everything.
You know, I asked about Turkey and we talked about the Middle East. I think we really should talk about Africa, because I'm looking at the list of countries that are applying for BRICS. And besides Asia, the second biggest number of applicants is from Africa. And last year we saw Ethiopia join, Egypt join. We have countries like Burkina Faso, Mali, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Central African Republic, Angola. All of them have expressed interest in BRICS. So my question to both of you is, why are we seeing this sort of BRICS spring in Africa? And what benefits can Africa bring to BRICS? And what benefits can BRICS bring to Africa?
Alexander.
So, in my opinion, that is key question, because Africa is already present by two countries, Sub-Saharan Africa by Ethiopia, that is very special, and Southern African Republic. That is Africa at its best in some sense, because this country has fought the very difficult fight, a war against Anglo-Saxon hegemony and imperialism, and has won this war. So Ethiopia was never conquered by the colonial powers, and that is the symbol of the proud of the African countries defending their identities. By the way, Ethiopia is Christian country, and monophysite, very ancient Christian tradition. I think the other countries who now want to join BRICS, they represent the other part of Africa, the Western Africa, Mali, Burkina Faso, Central African Republic, Nigeria. Nigeria is the giant of Africa, very powerful, very rich, very with highest level of culture. Nigeria is one of the most developed culture from all Africa. Yoruba country, and the other people from Africa. Showing the will to join the BRICS, they show the will to become the pole of this multipolarity world order, not by isolately. No country of Africa could now pretend to be the pole. There are no civilizational states therein, but creating a kind of Pan-African alliance, Pan-African Union, they could arrive at the point promoting integration of the sub-Saharan continent. They could arrive at the point to become very important demographically, natural resources, politically, intellectually, very important pole. We should not underestimate the African people. We should abandon totally the attitude to them in the colonial way, as they were judged to be kind of subhuman by British and French and Belgian colonizers. But they possess the huge richness of in any aspect of the life. They should be liberated finally, because the African peoples, they still are under influence, epistemological influence of the West. Now there is ongoing revolution of the mind, liberation of the African mind now, and they begin to regard the world from the Africa-centric position. And when they try not only to follow the former masters, but to try to clarify their own view, immediately they discover multipolarity. And this growth of the global consciousness, geopolitical consciousness of Africa, the growth of understanding of the responsibility of the African leaders in order to reunite their continent and to transform it in prospering, independent civilization. All that is clearly shown in their demand to be the part of Brics, because to be the part of Brics means to participate in the future and to follow post-colonial line still proposed by the West. It is the same as to recognize its dependence from the past. So we need now, and we observe now already, new cycle of decolonization. I am calling it this deep decolonization. They are decolonized on the formal level, but they still colonized in their minds. Now we need a liberation of African mind and totally a revision of their identity, because now most of the African countries, they are still dealing with imposed artificial identity proposed by ex-colonial powers. Now they need to start to think themselves as Africans, to be proud to be African, and immediately when they start to do that, they discover who and what is their ally, support, and the chance. The Brics is this chance, and I think that is very, very important. Africa chooses multipolarity and not Western hegemony. I would say that will be the doom of the West. Let it be so.
What about you, Pepe?
Just complementing a few things that Alexander said, the big picture of Africa, that's it. I think there's an enormous potential next year because the presidency of BRICS next year is going to be Brazil. And Brazil has an enormous soft power capital in Africa, especially Nigeria and Angola, two key examples. In terms of energy, cultural influences to the African. Brazil has an Africa inside Brazil. So it's very easy to communicate with Africa for Brazilian leadership. And Lula loves Africa. That's very, very important. So he will be a sort of, let's say, a super channel for Africa inside BRICS and to get more African members inside BRICS. At the same time, you will have the Chinese, at least 35, 36 countries where the Chinese are present all over Africa with development projects, and the Africans totally recognize it. They come here, of course, they buy our natural resources, but they say, what do you need us to build for you? They build it, and their loans they're not World Bank loans, we can pay them in 50 years or whatever, and they're helping our development. So when you have most African countries thinking these terms about China, so we have Brazil potential, China potential, in terms of Russia, who is agglutinating the Sahel, essentially. Diplomatically, conceptually, with a Russian subtlety that totally escapes the West. Russia. Burkina Faso and Mali look at Russia, this is our model, So we have three top BRICS deeply involved in Africa, especially, and starting next year, I would say a new cycle will start. And soon we're going to have BRICS, when we have BRICS plus, the new members, we can have 4 or 5 big African countries part of BRICS. And that will be a major game changer.
Interesting about what you have said, Pepe, about the inner Africa and Brazil.
Yes.
There are some special rights of Candomblé, African people living in Brazil, that begins with evoking the spirits from Nigeria.
Exactly.
Because the Candomblé started from Yoruba people. So this, in the minds of the Brazilian African population, or part of it, the Africa is the homeland. It's very, very, very close.
Yes.
So I think that is very special feature precisely of Brazilian culture. And these relations as well opens the question about formation of the Latin American poles in this multipolar situation. Now it is only Brazil inside of Brics after this very strange behavior of Argentina.
Yes.
That was totally irrational, I would say, from the part of its president. But I think the other countries from Latin America are going to join.
Bolivia and Venezuela are on the list now.
Yes, and Mexico has at least has expressed its will.
Interest.
So I think that it is ongoing process, and I think that it is very important that Latin America will discover multipolarity that fits very well to its classical aspiration to be independent, to be powerful, to be united finally, because as well Brazil is closer to the concept of the civilizational state than all other countries. But I think that complete version of civilization state should consist from all Latin American countries in order to create the great space of Ibero-America or Latin America. And more people start to think like that, I think. And that was one of the classical line of many different leaders of Latin America of the past. So not only from the left, but and from the right as well. Perón, General Perón was in favor of this unification. Getúlio Vargas in Brazil.
Vargas was a multipolarist in the 40s and 50s.
Exactly.
But can I compliment Alexander? 2 minutes.
Yeah.
We cannot underestimate the power of the US in Latin America. And it's still Monroe Doctrine. They will never abandon the Monroe Doctrine mindset. For instance, the commander of SOUTHCOM, General Laura Richardson, she goes to Argentina. Milei goes to meet her, not the other way around, and she wants to establish a NATO base in Argentina, in southern Argentina. Can you imagine? So the South Pacific will be
in order to protect Malvinas under British.
Exactly. So the South Pacific will be under control of Washington directly. You know, like those lily pad bases that they had in Central Asia and Afghanistan. They will have a major base in the second most important South American nation. So we cannot underestimate how powerful they are, and even worse, the comprador elites and the fifth columnists in all these nations, especially Brazil and Argentina. So this is extremely serious.
Well, gentlemen, I think we could keep talking about BRICS for hours because, as I said in the beginning, there's so much to discuss, but I think we did a pretty good job. We talked about geopolitics, we talked about economics, about philosophy, about the Middle East, Latin America, Africa, and Russia. So thank you both for coming on, for giving this geopolitical masterclass to our viewers. And to our first-time viewers, thank you for tuning in. If you like this video, please like it, please repost it. It really helps get the message out there. And if you want to stay updated with our content, please follow us on X. It really helps us get the message out there. Thank you all for tuning in. Till next time.